everyone. Welcome along. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be on planet Earth today. Welcome along to a special, extra special edition of the Magical Learning Podcast. Special for so many reasons, not the least of the fact that we have a very special guest with us today. Also, for those of you listening, not watching, you may be thinking, Jez, what's happened to your voice? And for those of you watching, be thinking, Jez, what's happened to you? And the short answer is a lot. So hi, I'm Grahame, I'm CEO of Magical Learning. We've given Jez the day off today. He has been doing a stellar job on our podcast, but today you're stuck with myself and Danette, our Director of Learning Extraordinaire. I'm going to get to our special guest in just a moment, but I want to start by checking in with Danette, who today I'm actually in another city doing some things with my family, my dad, and Danette is at home where it's probably warmer than it is here. I think we are somewhere around 37, 38-ish today in the national capital. It's probably more down south. Danette, how are things at home?
Hot, hot and hot. So I had back-to-back meetings today till 3:30. And after this, I am escaping to the lounge room because my office doesn't have air conditioning. It only has a fan. But I've had a great week and really enjoyed just a lovely weekend and super excited for our special guest today. So thank you, Grahame.
Pleasure. Great to see you as always. And a terribly shameless plug for air conditioning in your office. And yeah, I agree. It is hot. But having a fan just to blow the hot air around inside the room is such fun. For those of you who may be on the other side of the planet who have not yet migrated to the decimal, metric thing, we are north of 100. And our special guest will talk a little more about where the temp's been down here in just a second. I wanted to frame the podcast today by saying that we are recording and sharing this podcast with our good friends at the Moira Shire Council. Moira, as in the name, M-O-I-R-A, as part of a building business resilience program that they've initiated to help business owners and employees and residents in the Moira Shire following some fairly horrendous flooding a couple of years ago. We'll get back to that in just a second. It is now my great pleasure to welcome along our special guest for today. Would I be right, Vanessa, in describing you as the CEO, the Chief Entertainment, Vision and Motivation Officer of Nathalia Boarding Kennels and Catering? And Vanessa will explain a little bit more about the business. But Vanessa, welcome along to your first Magical Learning podcast. We're hoping it'll be the first of many. You're probably thinking, well, this will be the first and last. How are you today? How are things down in Nathalia?
I'm very well, thank you. Nathalia is experiencing some lovely weather today. We had a 40-degree day yesterday, which was just too hot. It's just too hot. So, no, Nathalia is very nice at the moment.
Excellent. Glad to hear that it's cooled down a little, so it's probably only 38 today. It's like, oof.
Something like that.
Yeah. I might have to get my hoodie out. Might have to get my hoodie out shortly and throw that on because it's cooling down a bit. Just for the benefit of viewers and listeners who may not live in Australia or anywhere near where we are, could you just perhaps share really briefly geographically where Nathalia sits?
Of course. So Nathalia is a small country town in regional Victoria. So we sit about 3 hours directly north of Melbourne in Victoria. And we're sort of about half an hour from the border of Victoria and New South Wales. Nathalia is a small community. It's got about 1,400 residents, and it sits sort of right on the edge of the Moira Shire.
Brilliant. Thank you. For those of you listening, if you happen to be within a day's drive, and it's a lovely drive in the countryside, or flight for that matter, I don't think it really matters. If you happen to own a plane or a helicopter, the next time you're looking at your loved pets thinking, we need a break from each other, then please just pop on in to Nathalia, see Vanessa, give her a call, and they'll be happy to help. Doesn't matter where you live.
No, we have customers from all over. So yeah, it's
obviously doing an excellent job. So, Vanessa, if I can, just moving on to part of the reason behind the podcast today in talking about some of the experiences of business owners and residents from the floods in 2022.
Mhm.
Can you just share perhaps some of your experiences from that, particularly, I guess, looking at how the events affected your business, but also how it affected you and your family?
Certainly. So uh, Nathalia floods quite regularly. So it's on sort of a natural floodplain, and Nathalia will flood sort of every sort of 17 to 19 years historically. So I think we flooded in 72, 93, and then 2012. So that was along our river system. The floods in 2022 were a different river system to ours. So it affected sort of more the Shepparton, Echuca, Rochester area. But what it did happen is it cut us off, or it sort of secluded us from a lot of our customer base, because a lot of our customers don't come from the local area. We service sort of Shepparton and Echuca and Cobram. And for us, like Echuca, we were completely cut off from, because both access roads were completely closed. So McCoy's Bridge along the Murray Valley Highway was closed, and then Barmer ended up flooding, and that access route was closed as well. So for us, the 2022 flooding was almost the inverse of 2012. So 2012 impacted us very directly, because Nathalia and all of the surrounding sort of farmland directly around our business was flooded. And we are sort of 4 kilometres outside of the township of Nathalia, but we were cut off completely from Nathalia due to the floods. Whereas in 2022, because it was a different river system, it was almost the opposite. Our property sort of remained high and dry, but a lot of our customers were impacted to the point where a lot of them had to evacuate their homes. A lot of them, their homes were flooded, and they had to evacuate their animals. So that's sort of where we came in. We became a place for our customers who had to evacuate. They could send their pets to us. It's just that getting to us was quite difficult, particularly if you were coming from Echuca. Like, we had one customer who drove, I think it was nearly 2 hours out and around the floodwater to come to us, which is normally a 45-minute drive, because their access routes were all cut off. So, Nathalia is very, very adept at dealing with floodwater, because we are so used to it. But this was a completely different scenario for most Nathalians, because the water wasn't directing us, it was directing the land around us, essentially. So that's sort of our experience from 2022 and 2012.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
So given that difference, that would have meant you had to perhaps adapt to, from previous experience, to a new way of dealing with things. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that work, but also some of the things that you would next time go, we probably wouldn't do that?
So Nathalia is almost very lucky in terms of the way that we flood, because we generally have a lot of time to prepare, because our river system, Numurkah, floods first. So Numurkah is 20 minutes sort of east of us, and they flood first. We can generally judge the water level from them, and then 2 weeks later that water comes down the river system and affects us. So we have a lot of time to prepare, and Nathalia is very lucky in that we have, I think we flooded, when Nathalia was its own shire, we built a levee system completely around the town, and then we also purchased a metal levee, so that the parts of the levee system that were open to roads, we could close them off and keep the floodwater within the river system. So obviously Nathalia knew how to do that. And when the floods came in 2022, because we knew the water level previously from 2012, from when it had impacted us, we could judge very clearly as to where a lot of that water was going to go. So we knew, say from our perspective at the kennels, we knew our property was not going to flood, but we knew that a lot of the access roads around us were going to be closed. We live directly across from the Broken Creek. So the Broken Creek is 30 metres from our front entrance, or from our driveway. And the roads around us, there's quite a lot of dips in the road. It goes quite shallow, and the roads around us are normally some of the first to close within the area. So we are very lucky in that you can go out of our driveway, turn left, and then you hit a higher road. Whereas if you kept going straight, you would go through floodwater. So those roads were closed around us, which meant that we had to go and meet our customers out on Centre Road or out on another road further to us, because our roads were only open to local traffic. If it happened again, we would probably say that road is safe to drive on, or contact the Moira Shire and say, can we leave that road open for just customers of the kennels or just for local traffic? Because I think us driving up and back to meet customers is no different than customers coming to in terms of traffic on the road. So that's probably one thing that we would do. But yeah, I think Nathalia is quite lucky in terms of how we flood. So we're just not as lucky as Rochester and sort of Shepparton and those areas that probably hadn't experienced that flood in quite a long time, and it came quite quickly. They didn't have a lot of time to prepare, and yeah, like Rochester really got really severely affected, and a lot of houses went under. So it was really sad to see. So you just got to be thankful that where we live, we flood the way that we do.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
All right.
Thanks, Vanessa. I was sort of, well, not so much picturing, but just thinking about parallels between Nathalia and your sort of shared or lived experience as a community with flood, and the fact that it happens reasonably regularly, even though there's a reasonable time period between each. So given that the last one was 2012, I'm sort of curious as what is your plan to get out of town within the next 10 years before the next one turns up?
Exactly. So the floods in 2012 were the highest on record.
Yep.
I'm from memory.
Yep.
And it came right up to our driveway. So we could get out of our driveway and turn left. We could not go right. From our driveway into town was completely flooded. So if the water was higher, we would be cut off. And we would therefore, if the water level in Numurkah was higher next time, we would evacuate, because you can't get dogs in and out or pets in and out, and you would be stranded there until the water went back down. So that would be our plan, is to sort of look at what the water level was, and if it was going to be higher, we would evacuate early, essentially.
Maybe have a chat with Jeff Bezos at Amazon about delivery by drone.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we can spray paddocks, we can deliver coffee, they deliver parcels.
Yeah.
How hard could it be to pick up safely, appropriately? For those of you thinking RSPCA right now, I'm not suggesting anything that would be harmful to the animals, just taking care of them.
Yeah.
Going back to the community resilience thing, I'm curious about your thoughts on this idea that because we've experienced something, and it might not be identical, flood level's always a little bit different, it might come on a bit sooner, a bit later, whatever it happens to be, but it's like, well, we've been through this before, therefore it gives us that sense that we can get through this as well. Whereas if it's the first time I've ever experienced, my brain's going, I've no framework for thinking about how I deal with this.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of, this is going to cause problems for some people listening, and I apologise ahead of time if this upsets you, but I was thinking about a parallel between Toronto in Canada and New York City. And this is quite a number of years ago, where Danette and I took our children to North America because we wanted to have a white Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Hard to get one in Australia.
Yeah.
Tricky at the best of times. And the weather looked after us spectacularly over there. We got a couple of feet of snow in Canada when we were there. But just experiencing, like, moving around in a motor vehicle or on foot in Toronto, and the traffic there is nuts at the best of time anyway. But because they are so used to heavy snows and have been for a century or more, their systems, their attitude, the way that they deal, the way they approach it, all of that's like, oh, this is nothing new. We've been through this before. We're okay. You know, that one guy was snow plowing a footpath on a little thing like a dingo digger type machine. But yeah, that one. he wouldn't let me buy it. But I was just looking to think, I want one of them.
Yeah.
But we contrast that with New York, and we spent a few days in New York because the kids wanted to watch the New Year's Eve thing on Times Square. And they got some heavy snow that I assume was unexpected, but it was just complete chaos, and the contrast between the two. And I remember thinking afterwards, probably because they don't get snow, like that volume of snow that quickly, that often, that it's a very different experience for them.
Yes. Yeah.
Did any of that make sense?
Oh, yeah, completely.
I was curious, Vanessa, just looking back over that 2022 flood event, partly because it was sort of similar, but at the same time quite different. And I was thinking initially, wow, that would have disrupted your supply chain because the families with pets weren't able to actually get to you. But it's nice how adaptive we can be when we have a need.
And it wasn't just the people getting to us, it was actually supplies getting to us, like dog food and all of those things that we needed. Yep. A lot of the access roads from, because these companies come from Melbourne or from Shepparton, they were all closed. So yeah, that was a difficult thing, trying to stay abreast of like road closures and things, and being able to say, well, this road's open or this road's open. So
yeah, I was going to reflect. So we had a guest, Dr. Hayley Sconce, and she goes into disaster recovery areas, and particularly is interested in looking after the pets, because often if the pets aren't looked after, the owners actually, their resilience then tends to drop pretty heavily. So I wonder whether that's part of your experience too, just being able to give others resilience by knowing that their animals are safe.
100%. A lot of people will not evacuate without their pets. So a lot of people will stay in dangerous situations, whether it's a flood or a fire or something, because they haven't got a safe place or they can't take their pets with them. So a lot of our customers who had to evacuate, they would call me and say, we are evacuating. And the first thing that they thought of was their pets. They said, once you come and get our pets, we can then think about packing up and like relocating or evacuating. But they wouldn't do that until I had come to them, got their pets and taken them home, and they knew that they were safe. So we had a couple of dogs from Rochester that evacuated early. But the thing was, because it flooded and it flooded for so long, like Aurora was the dog's name, she was with us for months because we couldn't actually get her back to her owners, because first of all, their property had been flooded, the fences were damaged, they couldn't get Rory back into a safe place. And say a couple of my customers from South Kyalla and Kyalla evacuated, and to get to them was, well, not impossible, but it took a long time, because there was one access road around Shepparton, which is called Doyle's Road, because the main street was closed. And because everybody was using that road, it took 2 hours to go a couple of kilometres, because it was all like a traffic jam. So we would meet them in Kingupna, which is sort of the north side of Shepparton. And like we had access routes through Numurkah that we could get to. But for them to get 10 minutes down the road, it took them a couple of hours. And then they had to get 2 hours back to their house, pack up and evacuate, but they wanted to get their pets out first. So yeah, pets are a very important thing to people. So having a place where they could go, where they had been before, they knew us, they knew that their pets were going to be safe. That was really important for them. And that meant that they could free up some mental, emotional and physical space for the other things that they needed to do.
Yeah. So I suppose when people are planning, if they have pets, this is definitely part of their, making sure that they are protected, look after, and have that in place. Yeah. So then I'm curious, Vanessa, how do you keep your resilience? Because obviously there was a lot of stuff going through for you or on for you, both in 2012 and 2022. Mm-hmm. How do you stay resilient with everything else?
I think COVID was probably the best training module for resilience that you've ever seen. So our business relies incredibly heavily on people being able to travel and people being able to attend events such as weddings, birthdays, concerts, things like that. And during COVID, all of that was gone. So we lost probably nearly 70% of our revenue during COVID because people couldn't travel. and therefore they don't need a boarding kennel. So what we learned is that we had to adapt and that we had to diversify, and we had to do that on the run. So we really pushed a program that we've got called Doggy Day Out, which is a daycare program where we go to Shepparton and we go to Echuca. We pick up a whole bunch of dogs and we bring them back for a day of play, and then we take them back in the afternoon. So we sort of really pushed our daycare, because when people were in lockdown over COVID, they couldn't take their dogs for a walk, or they couldn't take them down to the dog park. So a lot of dogs were stuck inside. So being able to offer that, because we were considered an essential service, yeah, that was sort of how we stayed afloat during COVID. So I think the floods coming around for us, it wasn't so much about being resilient for ourselves. It was being able to offer a space for our customers so that they could be resilient, because they were the ones who it was impacting directly. So for us in 2012, like, you can only do what you can do. You can't control things. I think that's one thing you've got to realize, is that you can't control the uncontrollable. The water's going to keep rising, whether you're pushing it back with a broom or not. So you've got to find ways to sort of deal with that and realize that it's not within your control. So I think, yeah, the sooner that you realize that you can't control everything, the easier it is to deal with, because, you know, you're not thinking, woe is me, or why is this happening type thing. It's just, you got to do what you got to do.
Yep. And I've noticed throughout this conversation, you have beautiful language.
Oh,
so you tend to focus on what you can control. And in that language, it's really beautiful. And like you said, we're lucky and things like that. So you're recognizing that literally we can't control everything. And what you can control, you then go, okay, well, what are the things that we can do? So I just wanted to acknowledge that in you, because that is a really, like, what I've noticed with people, that resilience comes through in the language and the stories that they tell themselves. And you obviously have a really good language and story around that to support you and the business to move forward. So
and I think support is another thing for resilience, is because I was born in Nathalia. I've grown up in Nathalia. I've lived here for 34 years. So I've been through two floods, 93, 2012, and then 2022. And I think knowing the Nathalia community and how they band together, I know that if I got on the phone, or if I put a post up on Facebook saying the kennels needs to evacuate or anything like that, I would have a stream of people from Nathalia that probably have never met me before. That would be like, I'll take a couple of dogs, put them in a crate, I'll put them in my backyard, or anything like that, until we can get them back to their owners. So I think knowing that you have a really solid foundation of support that you can fall back on means that your resilience is a lot higher, because you know you've got that support. So yeah, Nathalia is a wonderful community.
Yeah, and I love that, because often when people get under pressure, their brain goes, it's me against the world. Yeah. And I love that whole opening, that, you know, one of the things we always see in Australia when there is disasters happening is that communities rally around one another and strangers help strangers. So again, a fabulous point, Vanessa. Thank you.
Great questions too, Danette. Thanks. Vanessa, I had one other question written down, which was, again, looking back over your experience during, and I completely disconnected the 22 floods from COVID, and a great reminder that for a business such as yours that relies on so many or so much social freedom in terms of travel and being able to be outside of your own home, things stopped. And we, Danette in particular, does a lot of work around this idea of adaptability. And some of the things that we understand from science around adaptability and resilience feeds adaptability is that we need to have a sense of calm around us. It's really hard to be adaptable if you're stressed to the max. So, and some of the lessons, the experiences that you've had individually and then collectively within the community. I know, just going back to a phrase, I didn't write the thing down exactly, but Danette mentioned the link between, that emotional link between owners and pets. Well, it should be the other way around, pets and their humans. And the fact that those emotional ties are often quite strong, very important. I refuse to leave. I don't care if my personal safety is at risk. I'm not leaving until I know that I can also take care of my pets, my animals. Recognizing that as human beings, we need to be able to get to that point where we have some level of calm, because without that, we can't think clearly. So, in your situation, being able to help create some comfort and certainty and calm for your customers, is it fair to say that to do that, you need to be in that sort of space yourself to start with? Like if you're running around in an absolute panic because there's another flood, but this one's different, and COVID as well, and all of a sudden we've got no customers, there's no money coming in the door, I've got all these staff, got all this stuff. So is it fair to say that the community aspect is one of the things that helps you stay in that calmer state?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So that's community within Nathalia, that's community with Victoria, but it's like all regional Victoria, but it's also community between me, my staff. So we're very, very fortunate that we have a great cohort of staff that work for us and that go above and beyond. So, you've got to have trust in them and know that if you have to rush off to go and pick up a dog, that they're going to hold the fort for you at home. So, it's about having that sense of community, whether that's family, work, or your actual town that you live in or the area that you live in. So small country towns generally have a very strong sense of community because most people have grown up here, or a lot of people have grown up here. A lot of people are generations into living into this town. So you're all connected in some way. So a very strong sense of community in regional Victoria.
Yeah. And so, obviously there's a lot of value there. Sorry, I was just going to say really quickly, somebody who comes into town and then decides to live there, what's the
process to becoming a local?
Well, I was going to say, what's the timeline? Because in Gundagai, we're 20 odd, heading towards 30 years, and still you're just a blow in.
Yeah.
So it's probably the same.
Probably the same. So, it's hard. People have different opinions because families have lived here for a long time. I'm the second generation. Well, my dad moved here when he was 2, my mum when I think she was 14 or something like that. So, but yeah, they're considered locals. So I guess maybe one generation in, but no. I think if you contribute to the community, I think is a really big thing. If you join the community and you contribute, that's a really big thing.
Nice. Thank you. So, Danette, did you have a question?
Yeah, so that discussion prompted me thinking about your team and the resilience. So how do you bring together a team that can cope with the highs and the lows? And as you said, you might have to go off and collect animals, that they're able to move forward in a really good way in what is a very disruptive situation.
So working in a boarding kennel is not for the faint-hearted. It's a lot of physical labour. It is a lot of physical labour. And the way that we run our boarding kennels, it's very much focused on socialisation and exercise. So we have 7 acres and we have 40 what we call day yards where the dogs are placed in social groups and they get to mix together. So you are on essentially high alert all the time because you've got all these different dogs and all these different personalities to deal with. So to sort of thrive in that environment, you have to have an inner sense of resilience anyway. So most of our staff are very practical, but obviously to work with animals, you have to have a sense of compassion and emotion. So, you have to have this nice balance between practicality and logistical or logical and emotional and compassion. So which I think is probably a really nice mix of understanding for resilience, because you have that solid foundation of practicality, but you have that emotional component where you can connect to your customers or connect to whether they're human or whether they're canine or feline. So you have to have that balance. And sometimes it tips a little bit one way or the other, and you have to sort of do a bit of retraining to say, this is what we would do in this scenario. This is how we would handle it next time. So yeah, but our staff are wonderful. So, and a lot of them have worked with us for a long time. So, we've got staff that are going on 12 years, 5 years, 7 years, things like that. So you know, you've got to create a really good environment where they want to stay, because within the boarding kennel industry, there's not a lot of opportunities for progression. So, you know, you need to be able to offer them different things to help them stay within the industry. So whether that's upskilling or training in something different, or offering them the opportunity to go to workshops to further their education, it's things like that to make your team feel valued and really sort of a cohesive unit. So I can't remember the question now. I've talked
No, that actually answered it beautifully. And Vanessa, what I love about that answer is that, you know, we need both the sort of planning, logical type skills, but we also need the human side as well. And where it gets out of balance, you give feedback. And I'm thinking, you know, when, as Grahame said before, when we get under pressure, we tend to stress, and our brain tends to narrow its neural pathways. We tend to often get very practically focused. We lose the human side. And I love that, you know, they're the indicators. Okay, that balance is out of whack. How do we bring it back? And I suspect one of the things for resilience is being able to develop that people side, to go, okay, we know we're going to hunker down and get the practical stuff done, and to be a good community and to support each other. Working on those human skills also is super important. So we support not only ourselves, but others. So that was a fabulous answer. I don't even remember what the question was, but that was a brilliant answer.
My philosophy as an employer or as a boss is that I will never berate one of my staff members for doing something that I wouldn't even say wrong, but for doing something potentially in not the way I would do it. Because everything is a learning opportunity. So you can say, look, I understand why you did what you did, but next time this is what I would do, or this is what we're going to do, or let's rehearse that, like go back over it and try it a different way and see how that feels. So that's sort of, again, about building resilience in your staff members, because you want them to feel confident and you want them to feel valued, but you also want to say, well, you know, talk me through, why did you do it that way? Like, what was your thinking process? Was it logical or was it emotional? And then what can we do with that information?
And I love that curiosity, even asking that question around, you know, walk me through it, talk me through it, because it allows the other person to feel heard as well, rather than you're not listening to their way of thinking. So awesome.
So much. We probably should have allocated twice the amount of time that we allocate for this. I love the everything as a learning opportunity. It's such a gorgeously open growth mindset approach to life and experience and working with people and working with animals. But we are sort of heading towards the tail end of this podcast for today, and I need to start to wrap up with probably the most important question, Vanessa, and I know many of our listeners and viewers will be wondering this. And to frame this, I saw a poster once, can't remember where it was, I should have bought it at the time, but the poster simply said, dogs have masters, cats have staff.
Yeah, it's very true.
Frame that way. You take care of other people's, both canines and felines. Which would you prefer? Which is better? Which is easier?
I would never be able to answer that, because my staff, my customers would come for me. I personally have both cats and dogs, and I love them. So some people are very cat people and some people are very dog people. But for me, I love them both. And I have to say that because my livelihood depends on that. But the reason that people like cats and dogs differently is that they offer different things. So some people might be scared of dogs. They've had a bad experience when they're younger, but a cat is smaller. A lot of the times they're a little bit more aloof, but they can also be really cuddly. So that can offer them the companionship and the pet that they want without that sense of fear. Whereas people love dogs because they love exercising, they love the rowdiness, they love that companionship. So, and then other people love snakes and turtles and things like that. So so you've got to, you know, that's the thing about people, is you can't control their emotions, but, you know, so everyone should have a pet. Everyone deserves to have a pet, regardless if it's a rock, but they, you know, they need a pet. So That's my philosophy. Look
It doesn't show up very well, but this is my pet rock. There's a story behind that. I got it from some lovely friends in Canada years ago. Any thoughts of expanding your empire to include a reptile park? Because we have some that you can come and take away, please.
So one of my staff is very into reptiles, and so she does sort of house sitting for reptiles, but we could never do it where we are because of the licensing and things that you need. Yeah. And we've tried small pets before, like small mammals, so like guinea pigs and rabbits, but they are just so easily stressed in new environments that for me it's much more practical to get a house sitter or someone in to come and take care of them at home. Like that is better for their welfare. Or having a specialized facility that specializes in small mammals, because then there's not the loudness and the smells and things of all the other animals that can stress them out. It's based on that. So no, there are no plans to expand past dogs and cats. We have more than enough to go around. So
on the one hand, I'm immensely disappointed. It's just me and snakes. It's a very long story. Yeah. On the other hand, it's a wonderful business lesson for anyone else out there thinking, or who might perhaps run a business at the moment, and just being really clear about why you exist, what your core purpose is. And becoming exceptional at that rather than trying to become everything to everybody. We are sort of heading towards the back end, and I had originally, Vanessa, thought what we should ask you, so what are your top 3 takeaways or lessons learned from particularly
I did write those down too.
Did you? So thank you for doing your homework. Much better at it than I am. So please share your top 3 takeaways.
I can do them really quickly. So
that's fine.
Top 3 lessons learned is that information is key. So if you're dealing with sort of a natural disaster of some point, information is your best friend. So we were really fortunate that some of the locals in Nathalia ran what's called the local notice board Facebook page, which is where we got a lot of our information, which we could then, verify with the authorities or have confirmed. So locals are your best source of information because they know the roads, they've been through it before, essentially. And you can then, which leads to my second point, which is communication. And communicating that to your customers is vital, because if you don't communicate it, they could head off towards you, hit a roadblock, and then have to go back, an hour from where they came. So communication is really key. And then the last thing we've sort of already discussed, and that's that people will do anything for their pets. So they go above and beyond, and pets in the last 20 years have sort of become a much more emotional thing. Millennials like myself have grown up and got pets, and, a lot of the time they are the most important things to us. So gone are the days where the dog slept outside or you got a neighbour just to throw some food over the fence. It's very much like they are part of your family, and the expectations around their care are a lot higher. So, you have to sort of move with the times and try and offer that for them. So they were my 3 big things.
Brilliant. Thank you. Love it. Danette, I might just pass back to you and ask any other comments or observations?
No, I think that was a really good conversation, and I reckon we're going to nab Vanessa and put her on a full team Magical Learning podcast, because I reckon there's some great conversations to be had. So if that's okay with you, Vanessa, we'll reach
anytime.
Out.
As you can tell, I like to talk, so it doesn't bother me.
Grahame, do you want to talk about the breakfast and that are coming up in?
What a great segue. Yes, I do. I just really quickly wrapping up, Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and everything with us. Lots and lots of notes. Some of the key points, in addition to your top 3, were around things like just the importance of being able to calm myself, recognizing that I can't control everything and stop wanting to, because that's also one of the things that causes us stress and robs us of resilience. One of the underlying themes, I think, in the conversation was the importance of relationships in the community. Mm-hmm. and how important that is for us personally and for us in a business sense, in being able to build stronger resilience. Oh, I love it. Everything's a learning opportunity. I love the doggy day out, and I was thinking, is that sort of like we have two granddaughters where you take your grandkids for the day and fill them full of sugar and then hand them back. And I was thinking, no, that's not like that at all, Grahame. Don't even say that. We will edit that out in post. Vanessa, thanks again. Really appreciate it. For those of our audience today who are listening to or watching this podcast and thinking, well, clearly Nathalia Boarding Kennels and Cattery is the best business of its type on planet Earth. How do I find them? So how can people connect with you and find out more about what you offer?
We have a website, which is nathaliaboardingkennels.com.au, but one of the best sort of indicators of who we are as an organisation and how we run and how the dogs and cats are cared for, you're best to go to either Instagram or Facebook. So we have a Facebook page, which is just Nathalia Boarding Kennels and Cattery. And then Instagram, I think our tag is Nathalia Boarding Kennels. We like to upload little reels and stories and things about what the dogs are actually doing, and it's a huge hit with our customers. So I love being able to see them when they're on holidays. So
yeah. Nice. I'm curious as to whether you do you have any cats and cucumbers videos on YouTube? Just out of curiosity.
No, I don't think I could do that to my cats. I just think
I don't understand that at all.
No.
But there you go. So Vanessa, again, thank you so much. We will include links to your website and your social media channels, etc., in the video so people can reach out to you. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing some time with you today. So thank you so much. Before we finish, folks, I also want to say thanks to Danette again for her wisdom, her questions, her presence. Love it. This podcast is part of a program, an initiative being run by the Moira Shire Council. It is the Building Business Resilience Program, and I just wanted to flag some events that are coming up in the next couple of months. There is a breakfast event happening in Numurkah at the Shamrock Hotel on the 18th of February, so a couple of weeks' time. Again, we'll provide links at the end of the podcast today, so that if you're interested in finding out more information or you want to register for it, then you can do that. We have a special guest speaker, Kate Burke, who is pretty much a local. Kate's at Echuca, so next door. Kate has immense experience in agriculture, farming, and also, because being on the river, has a lot of her own experiences around flood and disaster events. So Kate's going to be an amazing guest speaker. That's a business breakfast, 18th of February. Following the breakfast, we also have two workshops that Danette and I are going to be leading. For those of you who are watching or listening to this podcast thinking, oh, Grahame's going to be there? Oh, I've got to get my hair done that day. Be nice. I'll just sit in the corner and I won't say anything. But please, if you are a resident or particularly if you're a business owner in the Moira Shire, this program is specifically for you. The workshops are happening on the 17th and 18th of March. So we've got two half-day sessions. One will be in Cobram. I think the other one is going to be back at Numurkah. Again, we'll provide links at the end of the podcast today, at the end of the video, so that you can find out more about that. But if you own or work in a business in the Moira Shire, we'll encourage you to please just block out those dates in your calendar. We're also going to provide some coaching and mentoring support to business owners throughout April and May as well. So it's a fairly big program of work that the Moira Shire have invested in to help business owners, employees, and by extension, the community. I think that's it from me. Again, Vanessa, thank you so much for being on the call today. Danette, thank you as always. And to everybody listening or watching, have a magical week.